Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we're going super deep on this concept of a key-based web, and we're going to be talking all about PKRR.
Yeah, this is a fascinating topic. It really is.
I mean, it's PKAR, right? Like
Sure.
when I first saw this, I was like, PKAR, but it's PKAR.
Yeah, it's PKAR, so PKAR,
PKAR, got it.
and it stands for Public Key Addressable Resource Records.
Okay, so right off the bat, we're already in the weeds.
A little bit, yeah.
So for like, the average person like me who doesn't, live and breathe this stuff every day, what does that actually, like, what does that even mean?
Okay, so think of it this way. Imagine like a digital address book, right? And instead of using names or traditional web addresses, everything is located using these things called public keys.
Okay.
And your public key becomes like your address, your unique identifier in this whole system.
So instead of going to like google.com,
Huh?
I would use my public key
Yeah.
to access things and like prove who I am.
Exactly. And so right now we rely on systems like DNS, the domain name system, to translate human-readable web addresses, the google.com, into these numerical IP addresses that computers use.
Right.
PKARR aims to eliminate that reliance on that centralized system by using public keys.
Wow. So we're talking about like moving away from a system where essentially a handful of organizations control the internet's address book.
In a way, yes.
That's a pretty big shift.
Yeah.
How does PKAR actually pull this off?
So that's where this thing called the mainline distributed hash table, or DHT, comes in.
Right.
Imagine like this massive decentralized network that helps locate resources.
Okay.
And it's already used effectively in things like peer-to-peer file sharing.
Like BitTorrent.
Exactly like BitTorrent.
Right.
With PKARR, this DHT is used to find and address those public keys that we were talking about.
Got it. So instead of having like a central directory, it's like everybody holds a piece of the map and then together we can navigate the entire thing.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
Okay, so that makes it much harder to censor.
Right.
Because there isn't like one central point of failure.
Exactly. There's no single point of failure, which makes the network incredibly robust and resilient.
Okay, now we're talking. This is starting to sound like that decentralized dream we've all been hearing about.
Yeah.
But let's get down to like brass tacks.
Yeah.
If this whole system hinges on keys, what does that actually mean for somebody like me? Like, how would I build a website or share content in this key-based world?
So picture your public key as like the foundation of your entire online presence.
Okay.
You can attach various types of records to it.
Okay.
Think of it as like a digital passport
Okay.
that holds information like your contact details, links to your website or social media profiles. Even your latest blog posts can be attached to it.
So it's not just about finding websites. It's about managing your entire online identity, all tied to this one key that you control.
Exactly.
And because this key is, cryptographically generated and managed by you, it's inherently more secure and private than traditional models,
Right.
where your identity is tied to platforms that can be hacked or change their policies whenever they want.
Ex-
This is really making me rethink how we interact online.
Yeah, it's a very different way of thinking about things.
But I'm sure some people are listening to this and they're thinking, hold on, managing keys, DHTs, this all sounds pretty complicated. What do you say to those folks?
It's understandable. And remember, the early internet was considered complex too.
Right.
The people behind PKARR are well aware of this usability hurdle, and they're working on user-friendly tools and interfaces to make it easier for everyone to manage their keys and interact with this new web.
That's reassuring. So to make sure I'm following, we have this system where public keys are like our new digital addresses. This massive DHT network helps us find things without relying on centralized servers. We control our data and our identity, and it's all designed to be resistant to censorship. I can see why you're so excited about this.
Yeah, and we've only scratched the surface.
There's so much more to explore in terms of the advantages and maybe even some of the trade-offs with this approach. Well, let's dig into those advantages. What are some of the key benefits we could see if this technology really takes off?
So one of the biggest advantages is this idea of self-sovereign identity.
Self-sovereign identity.
Okay, so right now, our online identities are kind of scattered across different platforms. You've got your Facebook profile, your Google account, your Twitter handle,
Right.
each one controlled by a different company with its own set of rules.
And those rules can change anytime, which can be really frustrating.
Exactly.
It feels like we don't have much control over our own digital lives.
Exactly. With PKARR and a key-based web, your identity is tied to your public key, which you control.
Right.
You get to decide what information to share with whom and under what conditions. It puts you back in the driver's seat.
That's a huge shift in power, especially these days when data privacy is becoming more and more important.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about this idea of decentralized resource discovery? How does that play into the benefits?
So remember how we talked about the mainline DHT being this massive decentralized network?
Yeah.
Well, that means there's no single point of failure when it comes to finding information. Right. You're not relying on a central server or directory that could be shut down or censored.
So it's like the internet suddenly has a much stronger immune system.
Exactly.
It can withstand attacks or attempts to control information in a way that wasn't possible before?
Yeah, you got it. And this resilience also applies to individual users.
Okay.
If you're worried about a platform censoring your content or shutting down your account,
Right.
those concerns become much less relevant in a key-based web.
Because I own my keys.
Because your content is linked to your key. So as long as somebody knows your key, they can find your information.
That's a game changer for things like freedom of speech and access to information. It levels the playing field in a way we haven't seen before.
Yeah.
I'm also curious about privacy and security. How does PKARR improve those?
Well, since all communication and data access is tied to these public keys, you can use encryption to make sure that only authorized individuals can see your information. Think of it as having a built-in layer of security that's based on cryptography, rather than relying on a third party.
So no more worrying about companies collecting my data or hackers trying to break into centralized servers.
Potentially, yeah.
That's a big win. But you mentioned earlier that there are some trade-offs. One of those has to be the complexity we talked about before, right?
Yeah, you're right. Managing cryptographic keys and understanding how DHTs work can be a bit intimidating if you're not already familiar with these concepts.
Right.
It's not as easy as creating a username and password.
So how do we bridge that gap between the power and flexibility of PKARR and the need for user-friendly systems that everyone can use?
So that's where ongoing development and clever design come in.
Right.
Developers are working on tools and interfaces that simplify key management and make interacting with the key-based web more intuitive. For example, imagine user-friendly wallets that store your keys securely and handle a lot of the complex processes in the background.
So it's similar to how we use password managers today to keep track of all of our logins, but instead we're managing our public keys.
Exactly.
Got it.
There's also this idea of trusted home servers.
Okay.
These are servers run by individuals or organizations that you trust that can help you manage your PKARR records and make it easier to get started with the key-based web.
So even if I'm not a cryptography expert, I can still participate and enjoy the benefits of this new system.
Absolutely. The goal is to make this accessible to everyone, and developers are exploring multiple ways to achieve that.
There are other projects out there trying to build a decentralized web. How does PKARR compare to those platforms?
That's a great question. So those platforms share some similarities with PKARR, but there are some key differences. For instance, Nostr is fantastic for simple messaging and identity, but it doesn't offer the same level of flexibility for managing different types of data or for things like key rotation and delegation.
So with Nostr, if I lose my key or it gets compromised, I'm just out of luck.
Essentially, yes, PKARR has more robust mechanisms for key management, which is crucial for long-term security and usability.
Right.
As for Bluesky, while it aims for portability, it still relies on some centralized elements for things like identity, which goes against the idea of true decentralization.
So PKARR takes a more holistic approach, ensuring that everything from identity to data discovery is truly decentralized.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. What are your thoughts on the long-term potential of a truly decentralized web? What could it mean for how we use the internet every day?
It's like a huge change. We're so used to these big platforms and, this centralized control that it's hard for people to wrap their heads around what a user-centric alternative could even look like.
Yeah, totally.
So think about logging into websites or apps, right?
Right.
Instead of usernames and passwords, you might use your public key for a more secure and portable way to authenticate yourself.
So no more juggling dozens of passwords or worrying about data breaches on centralized platforms.
Potentially.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing.
Think about social media. What if you weren't confined to a single platform's ecosystem?
Right.
What if your content and connections were linked to your key instead allowing you to interact seamlessly across different platforms and services?
That's like taking the best parts of all the different social networks and combining them into a personalized experience that you actually control.
Right. Exactly.
How about content creation and sharing? How would that change in a key-based world?
So imagine publishing a blog post or sharing a video, and instead of uploading it to a specific platform, You just attach it to your public key.
Okay.
Anyone who has your key can access that content directly no matter what platform or service they're using.
It's like cutting out the middleman entirely.
A more direct connection between creators and their audience.
Yeah.
This is all incredibly promising. But I have to ask, what are some of the hurdles that need to be cleared for this vision to become a reality?
Usability is still a big one. We need to make managing keys and interacting with the key-based web simple and accessible for everyone, not just tech-savvy folks.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about, some potential solutions in development, like these user-friendly wallets and trusted home servers. I imagine education and raising awareness are also going to be crucial.
Absolutely. People need to understand the benefits of a decentralized web and how it differs from what we have now.
Right.
There's work to be done in explaining these concepts clearly and engagingly.
I think this deep dive has been a good step in that direction.
Yeah, hope so.
We've gone from the technical side of PKARR all the way to the potential impact of a truly decentralized web on society.
Yeah, it's been a fascinating conversation.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into PKARR and the key-based web. Be sure to check out the show notes for more information and resources. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible online.